Thank you for joining us for our first segment. We have with us this morning the good senator, as I called him, Senator Mark Lizarraga, who's a senator for the private sector. And you're in this morning to talk to us about the Belize Territorial Dispute Referendum Bill 2019 and the recent House meeting to debate one of the most important pieces of legislation in Belize's history. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Thank you both for having me again on the show. It is important to set a backdrop, first of all, and to correct some issues. First of all, I have not heard anyone in the debate saying that the people of this country do not have a right to go to a referendum. Let's clear that out, because they're confusing personal beliefs, whether they yes or no to the ICJ, you understand me, as to whether we are saying we want a referendum or not. I think everybody is saying we want a referendum. The message that I keep hearing is that we want it to be done right. And we're very concerned about getting it done right. The very reason this piece of legislation is before us is because in the piece of legislation that was signed and presented to the Governor General for his signature, as you know, was flawed. We're on path to a very, very important legal process, perhaps the most important legal process in our history. And it is critical, as you know, when you're preparing for a legal battle of this magnitude, to be able to have your people fine-tuned, to be able to articulate, but articulate in a perfectly legal way, so that you don't have any backdoors that people could come in and sidesweep you. Yesterday, for example, the very piece of legislation that we had in front of us had some errors. I don't know if you noted, but we stayed in committee a very long time because I wanted legal counsel to be there, parliamentary counsel to be there. Other senators had legal concerns también.
What are the errors that you're talking of?
Well, the areas are perhaps, in my case, more constitutional. One of the reasons I've been following this and I've been going to court is because of the constitutional ramifications of this case. And I think that it's sad to hear people say that you go to court on a technicality. I was reading a recent opinion from the Supreme Court of Jamaica where they said there's no such thing as political mischief when you go to court. The court is going to judge on law. So if you're going to present something to the court, you have to have it legally right. And legally right means crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and doing everything the way the law prescribes.
I want to stick a pin here because I think that clearly there were more eyes on the independent senators yesterday versus the government or opposition, because you're representative of a different sector. And I want to ask, as the business senator, how you came up with your position to vote no.
Well, as you know, I get advice from two bodies.
Yes.
And I must be honest with you here. The advice is divided. I must say both organizations have taken issue with some of the intricate, how do I say it? The intricacies of the constitutional crisis, I will say, that we could possibly face if we embark on a route and we don't have a roadmap clearly defined. For example, one of the big things one of the big concerns was, is this referendum binding? And it's not. And we have seen before where we've gone to referendum, the people have spoken, and it has not been binding. The very issue with the senators, as you know.
But is that the
right?
case,
With the 13th senator.
Is that the case, though? Because the Territorial Dispute Referendum Bill does reference the special agreement. I believe it says in accordance with the special agreement, which does then say that the referendum is binding.
Well, the way I understand it, and you need to correct me here, and this is why I try to learn and listen and get legal advice, is that the judgment of the ICJ would be binding.
Yes.
But the results of the referendum are not. you would need to correct me, Councillor, but
well,
that's the way
it doesn't specifically say it's
right.
binding, but it does say that that is the trigger for the process to go to the ICJ. So it's clearly defined in the special agreement.
Agreed, but I have heard legal arguments on both sides.
Okay.
So I'm saying that this is a highly technical question that if we have doubts, you know where we go to resolve those doubts? In court, right? So I'm saying here we have before us a piece of legislation that to me was clearly passed to circumvent the court.
Now,
I don't know if you agree with me, Councillor.
I know, but I didn't get an answer to my question. What
Go ahead.
you said was that the two bodies that advise you, the Belize Chamber of Commerce and the Belize Business Bureau, they did not have a definitive position on this matter?
No, the business community has decided that it's going to be embarking on this campaign of educating its members, sharing information when it has, exposing. We've had, the BCCI has had forums, but this is going to be a vote of conscience. That's our position. Yes, we believe that the people have to have a voice. We have to have a referendum, but let's do it right so that it cannot be challenged. We heard the opposition in the House clearly say that there are some things that may be challenged because of the way they're written. And all we're saying to government is, look, it's time that we all get together. Sit down, like the old days. Everybody used to get together when it came to this Guatemalan issue. There was no disunity. Positions were one. And that is what we're saying too, I believe. I must say, personally, I'm particularly grateful that the opposition, Her Majesty's opposition, has challenged things that are clearly flawed. And I would like to see those things carried through for clarity and for unity in this country, because we're so divided right now. Even the business community, to a great extent, is divided on this issue. And the division is not because we want to be divided, but we're divided because there are uncertainties. For the great part, a lot of it is legal uncertainty. We don't have the legal expertise that these people have.
Can I ask this question for a point of clarity? The government side, or the government senators, I should say, voted in favor of the bill, as well as the church senator, the NGO senator, and the PUP senator, Senator Woods, abstained. My question to you is, how closely linked is your decision to vote against this bill to your actual position on whether or not to go to the ICJ?
That is an excellent question, because I think a lot of people had this issue confused. I think this issue before us yesterday was clearly just on the referendum. It had nothing to do, and I was surprised at people that came out and stated their positions on yes or no to the ICJ. I think that is personal. If you want to make it public, that's fine, right? But I think that that had no place in the conversation as to this debate. This debate was strictly on how we go to the referendum, why we're choosing this vehicle, when there are other vehicles under laws, you clearly know, and why we chose this way, and what are the legal repercussions of this route that we have started to take.
Senator, I've said it before, I think that this has become is a propaganda war. And so that is why I agree with Marlene that the eyes of the nation were on the independent senators, yourself, the church senator, the public service representative, the NGO, and the 13th senator. But when you look at the actual function of the Senate, the function of the Senate, as I understand it, is to correct, it's a check and balance. My first question is, how did these errors pass from the upper house, the first marking teacher, if it was a school thing, the first marker, how did they pass the first marker? With those errors, and I've heard some of the errors that have been pointed out by Senator Courtney. Clear errors, things being referred to as being done that were not done. So that's the first question. Yeah. The second question is, ideally, what should happen? Should it go into committee, you put a red pen through it, and it read again? What is the process when an error is found? How do you correct it in the Senate?
It's not the first time we've found errors that have gone by the House. And perhaps because we're not concerned at political posturing, we read. we look at the issue before us. I mean, and I would like to think that we do a very good job at dissecting these things, looking at them from a technical standpoint. When there's an error, I mean, this was why we took so long in committee yesterday. Apparently, there are two types of errors. One that makes substantive amendments to the law, or one that corrects, let us say,
typo or...
Right, in this case, a wrong date and a wrong description. It gets technical, but there was a phrase that was not correct. The Senate does not ratify. The Senate authorizes the ratification of. Mm-hmm. And Honorable Amon, in this instance, caught that. And we had a great debate about it. And just to show you, we're not here to stop this process. We agreed amongst ourselves. We agreed that we would correct it in committee and proceed. We never want to stop it. Under normal circumstances, if you look at the strict interpretation of the law, it needs to go back to the House. So the Attorney General in this instance said, or no, I think it was a leader of government business, suggested that we've had precedents where, because the law was not amended but just corrected, it's okay and we could go ahead and pass it. And I think we all thought it was a legitimate explanation, and we supported it. So we have done good work together, and I have seen that in the past.
And this is after you already voted no to the bill.
Right, and I voted no because I had legal concerns. I had requested parliamentary counsel. I thought we were going to get that early to answer some questions. I wanted them on record, quite frankly. But that was not done unfortunately, until after the vote. So I made a qualified no, so to speak. I mean, I have concerns. It's not, please, again, no one that I have heard has said that we do not want the people to have a voice in a referendum.
So let's get into the substance of the matter. What are your primary objections to the Belize Territorial Dispute Referendum Bill?
My personal or the legal advice that we got? Because there are two. I mean, and I think I'm supported in one of my concerns. And to me, the biggest concern here is we're embarking on a road that could lead us to a constitutional crisis that we're going to have to come back to Parliament anyhow. And this thing about changing the Constitution, or possibly having changes to our borders. And that change could be negative or positive. But that needs a 2/3 majority. So here we are saying, look, we're going to go on this road. We're supporting going on this road. And whatever the decision of the ICJ is going to be, it's going to be final. And you can't appeal that. And binding. So let us say, for argument's sake, that we don't get a favorable judgment from the court. We do not get a favorable judgment from the court. Which parliamentarian is going to then vote in Parliament to change our boundaries or to reduce our boundaries? It's something we need to discuss, and discuss now, so that people know, so that people are informed. Yeah. These are the repercussions of your decisions. This is what can possibly happen. This is the roadmap. This is how we see it playing out. We're going to take away or add or do whatever to the Maritime Areas Act. We're going to do this to the Constitution. Make we have a clear plan, man. That is education. Education that pardon me, going around with caps, billboards just say yes or no, right? T-shirts, bags, bracelets, bumper stickers. No, that's not education. That's a political campaigning.
So your primary concern is one that is echoed in the challenge that is before the Supreme Court right now, that there is the potential for this matter to be tied to a constitutional change, right, which has a different requirement than was actually executed.
You start on a trip. You're going from point A to point B, and there are no gas stations along the road. You have to make plans. You have to know what you're going to be doing every step of the way.
Every country.
And that's all I'm saying. And I think that the legal opinions that we have got has said, yes, at some stage you have to deal with that. No, the Chief Justice did say, well, in his opinion at this stage, at the preliminary stage, that there are too many ifs. The people have to go to the referendum first. They have to say yes. The court has to rule, and it has to rule against us. But you know what? I'm not an attorney, but there's this case in Jamaica that recently came out to say, no, hold on a second, you have a right. You have a right to plan this thing through in non-legal language, right? You have a legitimate right to question policy when it heads in that direction.
Senator Lizarraga, I want to go back to the meeting yesterday in terms of the breakdown. Yesterday, I think most people are already used to the two major political parties. One is going to grandstand, the other is going to hyena and attack. That seems to be the divide for the partisan political parties. So to me, the real discussion happens in the independent senators. And the independent senators were split 2-2. And the narrative between the split seemed to be one side, yourself and the Senator Elena Smith, was let's get it right. These are the errors, let's get it right. The narrative from the two that voted in favor seemed to mimic what the government's position was, which is the propaganda that we all want to vote, so no matter what the errors are, we want to vote. That appeared to me the summarization of what there is. What would you have done, or what is your conversation with the other independent senators to say, no, these are not just technicalities that we can overlook. These are serious things that need to be addressed and should affect not your position in the voting room, but in the way that we exercise or function in the Senate. What were you missing, in other words, that they would say that they didn't vote the way that you voted?
We did not consult with them before a vote. This time was short. We were preparing. I am always locked down before any Senate meeting to prepare. But I did say to them, I said, listen to my presentation. And I thought that I would try and, have them at least see our point of view, or the business community's point of view, our concerns. Because we don't want to have another court challenge, because we don't want to have another pause. And again, the opposition party has every right to do what they're doing in court. You know that if you take a frivolous lawsuit to court, what the court does, and you have to pay, and there are penalties for that. So I'm not going to get into that. It is unfortunate, though, that persons take that, right, look, I could just get rid of this thing, but I'm sure it's deeper than that.
What do you mean, deeper?
Well, I don't want to put words into their mouth. I think Senator Salas, for example, was very critical of the way many things have been done and handled by government, but he believes that we need to get there and get there now. I believe
also an open yes vote.
Yeah. What was amazing was that he had serious questions to ask, concerns, but yet he voted yes before those questions were answered. But anyhow, you would have to ask him why he did that. But my point was, we have one shot at this thing, and we need to do it right. This is a highly legal environment, right? Besides being political, you're dealing with highly technical and legal questions. This thing to the court is highly legal and technical. I was very impressed, to be honest with you, with Senator Courtney's presentation yesterday. I thought it was magnificent. I thought in legal language and perfect sharpness, as he always is, he honed in on a lot of things. Look, there's so many things wrong with us. In the way we educated, in the way our institutions have the capacity to deal with this mad rush. I highlighted letters that were going back and forth that questioned the integrity of the very systems inside the elections and boundaries, the IT systems. The Attorney General has confessed to me that to put in a system that would be safe and secure would cost a lot of money. It hasn't been the priority. We've heard that before. And that we're lacking severely in IT expertise because the system needs to be ultra secure. And I agree with him if you have a system of that magnitude. But, however, we knew we were going to have to do this registration at some stage. We had to have the people in place, right? and we had to have the systems in place to deal with this, and not dealing with it at the last hour. We've also highlighted, and Senator Courtney highlighted, where people have been sending us things to say people have been moved, transferred, moved out, because people that perhaps would be a little less stern would be brought in this mad rush to get people.
I want to get in a question here before we go down that road. Yesterday on Monday's show, we interviewed Honorable Karim Musa talking about what took place in the House. One of the interesting points he made was that the opposition, based on what he said, was prepared to support a referendum, an amendment to the Referendum Act to allow for the referendum. And I want to ask you, because you are a representative of the business community, was there any version of a bill or amendment that you would have supported to allow for the referendum to take place?
I think that the Referendum Act had several places that you could have brought this referendum to, but what I understand from legal luminaries is this is a deliberate attempt to circumvent the injunction on that matter. Again, it's a legal question. One has to question why it was done this way and why a completely different new law had to be passed that tried to backdoor, some people say, the special agreement into this law. These are highly technical and legal matters. So I suggest that the place for legal and technical matters are the courts.
So if they had gone the route of a resolution or an amendment to the Referendum Act, you would still be unsure of whether or not you'd support?
No, I think the consultation would continue. The legal opinions that we got raised valid concerns, which by the way,
legal opinions
were rudely
that we got on the ICJ, or
on
legal
the
opinions
act,
that you
on the
got
act,
on the act?
Yeah.
That the business community got on the act.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they raised legitimate concerns that I personally shared. I mean, I shared those concerns. And go ahead.
Can you give us bullet points to some of those legal opinions, some of the points? Maybe we don't have probably the time to expand on them, but bullet points as to what the pointers, good or bad, were in terms of the bill from the legal opinion received.
Yeah. It said, for example, this is to show you that we have differing opinions on this matter, but it says, I saw that another attorney had advised that the preamble is unconstitutional as it puts our boundaries in question, and the boundaries are defined in the Constitution. I would disagree. The bill does not purport to change our boundaries. This would only come after a referendum authorizing a submission to the ICJ and a decision to redefine the borders. At that point, the change would have to be effected by a constitutional amendment and not a mere act of parliament. So isn't this what the case is about at the Supreme Court? That's why, you see, as a senator, I took an oath to protect the laws and defend the Constitution of this country. And if I can see down the road that something is going to cause a constitutional crisis, can you imagine if we have a ruling from a court and our parliament refuses to enact it? Who would enact not giving away one blade of grass or 1 square centimeter? How are we going to deal with that eventuality? Because everybody, including, as I understand, from what I've never seen Judge Barrow's legal opinions, but as I understand it, and again, Senator Courtney did an eloquent job of expressing those opinions, various opinions, there's a possibility. No attorney can tell you that it's not a possibility. All I want to see is what is our plan to deal with these things when they come up, and make we agree on the plan and make we move ahead. I'll go in there and gladly support the process.
Now, in terms of, is that the only point?
No, there were other legal points. I mean, for example, this advice we got said that Section 10 of the bill empowers the Governor General on the advice of the Minister to make regulations for modification of the ROPA and regulations made thereunder. And this opinion we got said, I think that any such regulations would be ultra vires or beyond the powers of the minister. So there are some substantial issues, right? We have seen too much in this country where politicians seek to undermine the strength and independence of our institutions, Kevin. We have seen too many times when government has uses its legislative might, by virtue of its majority, to erase errors that they've made.
So this might mean that, this might mean if some of the points here are substantial, it means there might very well be substance for another challenge to this amendment?
Yes. That's the point we're saying. Let's get it right.
Wow.
Right. Beyond that, we still have so many people. You reminded me before the show started that it was here in this very show that the chief elections officer said we had 2,500 people that need to be. We need to fix them up.
The AG said that is trafficking in mistruths.
Well, then he'll have to take that up with the chief elections officer who said it on public TV. So, what was my point? My point was that we want to work together, not as sides. You know, for example, the Attorney General got up and said, well, once we agree, the two sides agree. I said, hold on a second. There's 6 sides in this house. There are not 2 sides. But in his mind, he said 2 sides. So get the parties together, man. Make we do this thing right. Make we give the people a voice. Make we use this opportunity that we have, this pause that we have, to truly focus on the concerns of the people and truly educate them.
And, you know, when you talk about getting it right, one of the things I do want to bring into this conversation, as you stated and as we saw as well, you were present at the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal listening to the cases as they were brought before the respective judges. How much of what you heard in the presentations made by either the claimants or any party you feel has led to your own doubts as to how we should proceed with the referendum?
I'll be honest with you. Remember when we embarked on this? Well, first of all, let me go back. Channel 5 had a famous showing at the university, remember? That was
the town hall.
Yeah. And I said, oh my gosh, we need to have a lot of things done in this country as far as educating the people and conversation with the people. Anyhow, the rest is history, but we got in partners with the university. A bunch of people did 9 tours. I'm going to hurry up because you remind me I'm short of time. We went all over the country. That was part of my education too. I really want to be educated on all the sides of this thing. That is my job. I have to listen to everybody. Everybody has legitimate fears. We've discussed fears before, and concerns. And we have to listen to them and we have to find a way to address them. 1. 2, I've spoken to many attorneys on this matter. I've listened to many attorneys. I've spoken to a lot of attorneys on this matter. And they raise legitimate concerns again. So I think if we are forewarned should be forearmed, right? We need to prepare. And we need to voice those concerns. Because I know to drink nobody Kool-Aid. Nobody Kool-Aid. I want to do my own homework.
But the propaganda seems to be working against... I think people are missing a point. The point is that the Senate is a procedural safeguard. The whole purpose of the Senate is to screen and make sure everything okay. The last checking point. So for me personally, I was disappointed when one senator seemed to say that, well, we go through all of the technicalities and detail, let's get straight to it. A challenge to a second, let's say somebody goes and challenges this bill again in court, it will buy into the propaganda that they're simply trying to frustrate the process and stop people from voting a referendum and not get to the actual point of what your legal opinion of the attorneys are saying.
I want to read this for you. This was from the Court of Appeal in Jamaica. And with your permission, it says, dissent has a troubled history. The word dissent has often been a prerogative term. It says, dissenters have rarely been welcomed and are frequently viewed with suspicion, not only by the dominant power, but by a majoritarian opinion. Yet, the court says, in a democracy, dissent is essential. Essential. You need to have it. it is indispensable to our freedom. In fact, it is one of the authentic voices of our freedom, particularly in times of exception. And it says in wars, declared or undeclared, we are in a war. Perhaps not with bullets, but we are in a war with Guatemala. We have confrontations on our borders every day. Yesterday, I think you ran a piece. Don't fool yourself. It said particularly, when the freedom of a citizen is at stake, and particularly when the state itself seeks to curtail fundamental freedoms. We have a fundamental freedom, and we have a right to challenge things in court.
But you need public support, and public support seems to be tiring of, just tired of all the quarreling and fighting,
But I think the point that you're making, and I think it's clear, we'd never want to be in a society where it's all yes sir, yes ma'am, because that simply takes us back to colonial times. But the question I think Kevin was getting at was, if we were to look forward into the hypothetical future, and I think another point to make is just how often we have to talk about these hypothetical situations, which no one can clearly verify. But if there is a potential challenge, I mean, you could imagine a voter who would just be utterly frustrated. This education campaign, I mean, us here, we started immediately after the Guatemalan referendum. That was a year ago. It has been ongoing. We've been talking about this issue. And I think there may be a point where people will just say, they'll either completely disengage, they will be frustrated, and they would just want to get their voices out.
But isn't that a failing on the part of government? Prime Minister has made a commitment from 2008 to start this education campaign. I remember when Ambassador Murphy, who was supposed to be heading this education unit, visited us with us at the Social Security and said he was going to start this campaign. He made a presentation to us, gave me some books. I was very happy. From 2008. Then it went dormant.
Well, it kind of kickstarted
and now we're getting fatigued because it's like political season, the same way people get fatigued with political season. Because now you try to ram it in, education that should take a lifetime, you try to ram in the last year. Guatemala has been educating their people for how long? Right? So what is the rush? That is my thing.
Okay.
Right?
So
let us do it right. We have one chance.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think what we have to do is talk about the reality now. The bill was passed. The new bill, or the new act I should say, Belize Territorial Dispute Referendum Bill, allows for an expedited process for the referendum, where there had to be a 30-day wait. Once the writ was issued, it is 15, now...
minimum of 15.
So we're looking, and many have speculated maybe mid-May, maybe end of May. Let's just say we have about a month at this point. Where do you see your engagement as a representative of the business sector? And I have to bring that in because while I hear your observations as to the political process, representing the business interest is different. You have trade agreements or you have trade arrangements. We know where some have spoken about security of investment being a concern or wanting to establish greater business ties. So from a business perspective, where do you see your role moving forward?
I believe, first of all, that the people have a right to decide. Second of all, this is a national issue. We're talking about territory. Yeah. To me, with the greatest of respect, trade agreements and those other things can come subsidiary.
Agreed.
Right? So right now we're talking about the territorial integrity of our country, and that we need to make sure we have a proper roadmap that we all agree on, or that certainly the majority understands and agrees on, because we don't want to have no civil unrest afterwards. That would affect business.
Of course.
Right? That would be, you understand me, so horrible for business. So this is why it's important that we move it away from the political fray, and we continue to call for unity. Unity with the business community, unity with the unions,
My question, Senator,
Because
let me rephrase my question, because I will not sit here and have you think that I'm saying you need to look after business interests. But you are representing the business sector. As the government pushes a position that their party and their government has declared, as the opposition does as well, you have to consult with your people. Your people's concerns will be different from the union's concerns, for example, as workers. So I'm asking you, as a representative of the business sector, what are the concerns coming up from there, and what are the major points that they have when they talk about whether to proceed with the referendum before the Supreme Court case is settled, or how to proceed with the dispute with Guatemala?
Marlene, I thought I was clear earlier. We are divided on this issue. And as a result, the position is that you vote your conscience, and that we continue to educate our people. Yes, we're going to become engaged along the process. We're going to be concerned. We're going to have concerns. But the business community is not going to come out and say, vote yes to the ICJ or no to the ICJ. We're not going to do that. And I don't know if I will do that. My job is to do everything to ensure that the path and the process we're embarking on is a good one and is the best one for Belize. I am going to, we did it, man. I took my time. Nobody paid me, you know. Nobody paid for my hotel. Went all over the country, promoting 9 tours in all the major districts. Thanks to you for kicking it off, Channel 5. But to us, it was one-sided. We needed to have various parties. We want people to be exposed to the good, the bad, and the ugly, like we said. That, to me, and we've always spoken about that on this show, educating the people. That's all we can do. Then the people have to confront that ballot, and then they have to say.
Senator, May 8, 2019.
I'm horrible at history.
2019, it is.
Future.
Okay, okay.
Is the date that I have heard.
Okay.
Don't ask me how, but May 8, I heard, is the new date that has been set.
Doesn't surprise me. In Parliament,
referendum.
we had last one, so no. Our papers 2-3 days before.
Well, we have no confirmation.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing about being
This is
friends.
Kevin's shush.
Yes, this is my shush. This is about being friends with the garbage man and the people who people look over that are in the room while people are speaking. But May 8th is a possible date for the rehearing of this. I mean, for the holding of the referendum. Some people look at it and say, listen, we have to do it quickly. There's an election coming up in Guatemala. The court case is coming up. Let's take full advantage of it. Let's have it outside of silly season, of the political season in Belize. Do you think that a day like May 8th is enough time to address any of the issues which arise or which exist now and that are concerns now?
Short answer, no. You heard it from the chief elections. That's a serious concern. If any single Belizean is disenfranchised for whatever reasons, and we've seen Attorney Bradley, who's a UDP attorney, challenge some things, or if any one of those persons decide at some stage to challenge this referendum, we know it's not binding on the law. It lends to too many uncertainties, Kevin, and which is what we're trying to avoid. Chaos. We're trying to avoid this atmosphere that is explosive. Let me just say it like that. Because that would be horrible for our country. That would be horrible for business. Okay? There are a lot of things. Guatemala hit the pause button. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how much time we need. I'm just going to say this is an opportunity for us to reach out, truly reach out, and come to consensus.
I want you to qualify for me, because we hear it so often. When you say get it right, what do you mean?
I'm talking about the route, the plans, and the strategy. But let us agree to it. Let us check one another. You know, Marlene, we have seen a certain level of arrogance from the government, thinking that they know what is right, come hell or high water, and they're going to do things a certain way. And we've seen this trust that we should have in them diminished because of the countless times we've heard them so certain, and we pay for it. That is another thing that concerns the business community.
But the end justifies,
the
end justifies the means, because all of us want a referendum. So no matter how we get there,
I'm not going to bite your bit.
And so let's be clear. So when you say get it right, are you suggesting wait for the court case to be concluded? Are you suggesting an attempt?
I am not
partisan education campaign. I want to get qualifiers as to what you mean when you say get
I
it
think
right.
it would be wonderful. It would be perfection, perhaps, if you could see the government and the opposition and the social partners come together, devise a strategy that we can all agree on, and go to the people in unity and say, look, this is a process we've discussed. This is the roadmap. We all agree. Wouldn't that be nice? As it was in the past?
But there's no time for that.
I was
Oh, and I disagree with you. All we have is time. All we have is time.
What if an election
I know I'm not concerned about the politics, Kevin.
But
I'm not concerned about the politics. I'm concerned about doing what's best for Belize.
But
what I'm saying is this issue did not come about yesterday.
I understand.
This issue is not a new issue.
But a referendum bill is a political bill. It's a bill as to how to vote on a political process and make a political decision on the issue of how do we resolve a political problem, international. So
this is a national issue. Don't use the word political with it. It has become political, but it should be a national issue, Kevin.
But political doesn't mean
You're saying
bad.
political in the terms of the
Partisan
literal translation
yes.
of political, but we use political colloquially as
so,
partisan political.
No, partisan is a different thing.
Right.
But it's a political issue. It's not an economic issue. It's not a. It has economic components, but it's a political issue. What if, for example, there's an election in Guatemala, and we get an unfavorable, there is an unfavorable leader over there. They move the clown, and they put somebody else there who has a different strategy that negatively affects where we are. And then we miss the opportunity to go to court.
I'm not an expert in Guatemalan legal system, but I understand they've signed that. They've made a commitment on the treaty.
They've already submitted
and as well, if we
but
do not,
and
I stand to be corrected here, but the way I understand it yesterday was that if we get a no at the referendum, we can have another crack at this thing too, you know.
Yes.
So
that's why they can't make it binding.
That's right. Okay. So I'm saying, wouldn't it be better that when we all decide that this is the strategy we're going to take, this is the roadmap, this is our collective strategy, that the people are comforted, and when the people go, they go with a resounding yes, not 26% yes, or not a red yes, or a blue no. You know what I'm saying, Kevin? Wouldn't it be nice? Because that is the way, that is the way we have always been in this country when it comes to Guatemala.
Senator, I hear what you're saying, and it does sound ideal. And you have had experience in the Senate now for 8 years, I believe you said?
2 terms. I don't remember. I'm not good at history, I told you.
So
since 2012.
You've had sufficient experience, and even as an activist beyond that, to know that it's very unlikely that what you're speaking of will happen, especially when there's such a deep divide.
I've always tended to be somewhat of an idealist. You know that. Hope springs eternal. But again, what it is that we can do is just share our opinions, grounded on research, on belief, on conviction, and hope that we will educate people and try and convince some hearts. That's all we can do. That's all I can do. I'm doing the best that I can do in this situation. I'm trying to be as non-partisan as possible. I always have been. But when the opposition has points that I agree with, I will support their vote in the Senate. When the government has presented bills that I agree with, I have supported their positions too. Yeah. Right? Well, I take advice. I take advice from the business community. I listen to them. But my advice is wide. I have people calling me from the public service. I have attorneys calling me. I have people from all over feeding me information. And then at the end of the day, I took an oath to defend and protect the laws and constitution of this country, and that's what I try to do.
No, and I just wanted to throw in there, I think we're oftentimes, and for a long time I should say, people called the Senate a rubber stamp. The introduction of the 13th senator, which was a long time coming, is actually one of the opportunities. The Senate has an opportunity to be able to be a real check and balance And so we do appreciate that you took the time to do your presentation as you did yesterday. As I clearly said, it is now, it has been decided. It was passed in the House, it was passed in the Senate, and now we are looking to find out when the new date will be and proceed from there.
I pray that the Prime Minister takes this opportunity to truly reflect on what is in the best interest of Belize and what is in the best interest for unity. I know that that is perhaps ideal, right? But it has to remain a prayer that the Prime Minister of this country reaches out and tries to get buy-in to this thing so that we do not go to a referendum and it remains a partisan issue. It has to become a national issue.
And given your opposition to the bill and the circumstances that exist today, when the referendum is held, will you still participate?
Of course I'll participate. I'm a citizen of this country. I have gotten my card already. Thankfully,
everything was correct.
It was an easy process. You know, Marlene, I need to check that. To be honest with you, I haven't scrutinized it, but I will now that you bring it up. But yes, I went in with my passport. I got a receipt, and then we went to pick it up, and it was fairly straightforward process. So, and I know the importance of the vote. And this is why I say it really concerns us. I think the Prime Minister has said in public that he's going to address this whole issue of the problems we're having. No, along these lines, he's going to call a press conference and whatever. And I hope that a mechanism can be found to correct those before he announces his date.
Can I ask my final question?
Because that's a promise he made too.
Can I ask my final question in terms of mechanics? You were speaking of mechanics just now. And you said something which is ringing in my head, which is that there are 6 sides in the Senate. In hindsight, would you have done it a bit differently in terms of trying to get the independent senators together and try to find some common ground? So if the best thing for the country was for the independent senators to vote in favor of the bill, then that be done. Or if it were to vote against the bill, for that to be done. Similar to the way that the leader of government business and the representative from the PUP are supposed to sit and talk. Couldn't the independent senators have led the way to come together and find some common ground?
I'll be honest with you.
Hindsight.
I'll be honest with you. Hindsight. Perhaps you're right. If we had a lot more time, I had this is a legal issue, and this is out of my realm, really. The intricate legalities. I spent my time consulting. And a lot of the stuff that I got from the chamber was at the 11th hour too. I was really dissecting things the very morning of my presentation. I did communicate with my colleagues briefly, and again, as I said, I asked them to please listen to my presentation and to listen to my concerns, and I was hoping that would have persuaded them. But I'm sure at that stage, it's almost too late because they have already had their consultations.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Senator Smith
had her consultations. Senator Sala claims that
Senator Ashley Rock had consultations?
No, some of the senators. I did not hear him mention. He said he didn't come with a.
That conversation you can have with him.
I would love to.
Invite him on your show.
So
I think you
should. As we heard, Senator Smith did say that she had done her consultation. The NTUCB had instructed how they would vote. So I think it is an interesting point, of course, gentlemen, that horse is out the gate. And we are looking forward now to seeing what will take place. We do appreciate you joining into the conversation today to share some of the points. There's a lot more to get into, but some of the points that you presented at the Senate yesterday. Yeah.
I just want to close, if I may, telling the Belizean people that whenever the referendum is called, and we all support the referendum, we have concerns about the bill, but we all support the referendum. Whenever the referendum is called, please come out and vote. It is your obligation to come out and vote. This is perhaps the most important issue you were ever going to vote on.
Yeah.
So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you too. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be looking at some Easter items you may need for this weekend, so stay tuned.
What do you want from your bank?
I want to know that my bank will teach me how to save.
I want to know that my bank can help to make my dream of owning a home a reality.
I want to know that my bank will help me grow my business and build Belize.
I want to know that my bank will keep my investment safe.
Whether you want to start a savings plan, build your own home, invest in your business, or plan for retirement, the Belize Bank is here for you. The Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
This Easter, Belizeans will be traveling all across the country, from the Rio Hondo to the Sarstoon, to enjoy the endless, unmatched natural beauty of the Jewel. Some will choose to simply enjoy a quiet break in their hometown. Wherever you are, as you and your loved ones enjoy this Easter, do keep our security forces in your prayers as they guard our borders and waters. And think of our country and our duty to safeguard her. Happy, safe, and blessed Easter from the ICJ Referendum Unit.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality,